Welcome back. I invite all of the editors to pop up and join the session here. Derek, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay.
I was just getting some water for myself.
Okay. Please send in any questions you have over chat. Again, they can be directed to a particular individual, particular journal, or just in general. A few did come in over the course of the presentations. So actually I'll backtrack a little bit and pull those up to get us started here. Even though there were some answers going out, I thought people might not have caught all of those. So we might pick that up again. One of them was concerned with if design science and action research are the same. And I noticed that Ralph sent out some response to that. You want to embellish that, Ralph, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's easiest to look at the paper. It says there are commonalities and there are differences between these two research approaches. And depending on the situation of the research, one is better suited than the other. So it's a typical case where we have some overlap in processes, but not necessarily overlap in the idea behind the research.
Yeah, Gary, I responded to that because design science research can be used as a form of action research. And some of the papers that we published in International Journal of Managing Projects in Business, they use design science research as a form of action research. So there are examples of how it can be used.
Okay. Had an interesting question from a doctoral student. Said looking for some good sources. Looking for some good sources for project management theories. Where would you go to find? Is there a centralized warehouse or just extensive reading required?
Well, if I go first, I would say the latter. Yeah, it's extensive search required, so that there's not one database for project management theory. You find, for example, the theory of the temporary organization was first published in the Scandinavian Journal of Management. So it's not even in a project management related journal. So you find theories related to projects in all kinds of management journals. So it is really a question of using your search engine and using the right search terms related to your study and related to project management, so that you can identify the relevant work. What we often see is that people are not really broad enough in their search. In the last conference, for example, we had somebody who said he's doing research on scope creep, and there's nothing published on scope creep. Opposite to that, all journal editors agreed that there's nothing more researched in project management than scope creep. Yeah, so it is a matter of using the right terms. So if you type in a practitioner term like scope creep, you will not get a lot of feedback from the search engine, when you look for academic papers. Yeah, so scope creep comes as something very different and typically more specific in the academic literature. So be innovative. Find other words for things you are looking for. For example, instead of projects, use temporary organizations. Yeah. Instead of scope creep, you use something else. Yeah, like over budget, over and over again. Yeah. So if you read the work of Flueberg, it's all about scope creep. Yeah, but he never uses the word scope creep. Yeah, so it's a question of searching and searching and searching again, and then finding what you're looking for.
Can I also comment a little bit? We tend to get those kind of articles that cover all kinds of theories. We do get those review papers and the challenge there is that they tend to be so thin that I think it's much better for you to find the theory that serves your purpose. If you think kind of your own idea, so find the theory that serves your purpose. There are multiple options out there, but all of the theories that exist in organization studies or behavioral studies or any other studies, they serve a certain purpose. And instead of skimming through everything, I think it's much better to find the focus, find the theory that serves your purpose and focus on that. There are so many options, and there are papers that do cover some theories. So at least, for instance, if we think about governance or portfolio management or those kinds of issues, we do have papers that kind of go through a couple of theories that suit this purpose. So those could be a starting point, but then indeed, I would say that find the one that serves your purpose and go deep in that instead of skimming through everything. And then also another comment, bodies of knowledge are not theories.
I might just make a comment, and that's one of the options. I think it's worth trying. Is looking first of all to find a paper that really interests you, that you think is new, and then just go through the references. Just trawl through the references. Probably loads of ones there, and you can do this kind of snowballing, which will help you to sort of get further insights and further papers, and then you can look at those and then go through the references of those. So that's one approach that I often recommend to people, and I think it's a reasonable way of doing that.
If I just may add one more sentence or two more sentences to what Mia just said, that project management standards are not theories. They are done for a practical purpose. Yeah, they share the knowledge, they share common practices, maybe best practices. We can discuss that. I think one common mistake is very often that, especially when you are a PhD student, you are quite familiar with the standards. Especially when you're coming from practice, yeah, then these standards seem to be the project management, but it's not. And so this is the invitation to go beyond the standards. Yeah, so it's not a theoretical piece if you criticize one of the standards or use it as a basis and try to further develop the standard. Yeah. This is a development piece, and that is also useful. But this is a different type of exercise, and definitely not, or definitely don't use any of the standards, and it doesn't matter which of these, yeah, as a basis for your research.
Yeah, I can only add to that and support it, because as a project management journal, we have the Project Management Institute as in the back as kind of the the money giving or funding organization. And therefore, many people think they should send papers in that make use of the PMI PMBOK guide. Yeah, so we get quite a number of papers where people say, I used the PMBOK guide in military projects and I used it in something else. And we have to disappoint these people because we are not out for these types of articles. In fact, if you read the mission statement of Project Management Journal, we clearly say that we are not looking for papers that have to do with practice standards, having to do with the fact that the way these practice standards are developed are very different from academic ways of developing knowledge, and therefore they simply have no credibility in the academic world. Yeah, so it often happens that we have to reject papers because the most basic definitions for a paper are taken from a practice standard, and the standard has no academic credibility. Yeah, so the entire study has no credibility with that, and therefore we have to reject these types of papers. Yeah, so be very careful when you use material from practice standards. Yeah, it's quite controversial to use it in academic settings.
Okay. Ofer, there was a question directed to you. Why project management journals, including IJPM, are not in favor of mathematical analysis? Statistical analysis like SEM, hypothesis testing in different forms are commonly applied, while mathematical analysis like multiple criteria decision-making or data development analysis or optimization are not published that much.
Yeah, I think different journals have different expectations about what kind of methodology is being used. I think in IJPM we have a clear view about mathematical modeling and how it fits with the journal. Maybe Martina can talk about this as the editor of the journal, and maybe there are different views or different reasons from the other journal editors.
Okay, Ofer, if I may take over. I think there's a distinction to make. And this distinction to make is if you are developing a mathematical model and algorithm for cost management or scope management or whatever, then this is actually out of scope of International Journal of Project Management. These very often come with a demonstration. So that was a strategic decision taken 2016, 17, even about that time, that when we had very many papers, about 1,200, 300 a year, that we needed to make a decision. And we wanted to reposition the journal also in a way that it is also easier and more applied for practitioners. And paper with a lot of formulas, yeah, that is very, very difficult to read for practitioners, and is also very often limited in practical applications because you just do a demonstration. So this was a decision. So this is out. But of course, we welcome very sophisticated quantitative approaches if you do a multi-level survey or other approaches here. But we then would also tell, please don't use the formulas in the plain way, explain it in a format that the average reader can understand that. So I would like to make this distinction.
Maybe one of the aspects of this decision has also been the fact that it's very, very difficult to get reviewers for such mathematical modeling papers in this journal or these journals. So we just don't have those people. So operations research related journals do have those reviewers. So I think it's not fair to take in papers that we can't find reviewers to.
I agree, Mia, but I think it's also strategic positioning. Yeah, so we could have positioned ourselves into that direction, but we have not. Yeah, and this is also why we have not the reviewers for it. And I think operation management journals are the better place for such pieces.
Okay. We also have a question, a compliment too, saying all 3 represented journals are great, but there's 4 here. Some are higher ranked than others. How do you differentiate yourselves to inform which journal might be best fit for our research instead of just going for the ranking?
Yeah,
Shall I go first?
Question. Ralph, you want to start?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Good. There's no simple answer to that. And I would say, if you have a certain topic that you want to publish on, then look through the journals, what they have published, and go for that journal that has published most in your area of specialization. Yeah, so that you don't come in as the odd person, yeah, being the very first writing on, I don't know, emotional intelligence in a journal that has never published on it. So look for a journal that has published on the subject. They then have the reviewers who can do the review. Yeah, they have the readership and in the audience that can engage in the scholarly dialogue around the subject. And you are probably better off in the journal that knows the subject more than in a journal that knows it less. Yeah. Apart from that, I think you heard from all journals that these highly mathematical papers are not very attractive for us because we have a different strategic orientation. And so if you have these mathematical papers, you might consider sending it to an operations management journal. When it comes to the 4 journals that are represented here, I can speak for Project Management Journal, who made in 2018 an editorial board decision that we would sharpen our theoretical profile. So in other words, if you have conceptual papers, literature review papers, etc., we highly welcome them. But having said that, we are also open for all kinds of methodologies, be it mixed method, be it action research, be it quantitative, qualitative, you name it. Yeah, as long as it is a methodology that is credible enough so that the results of the study are all credible.
I think I might just add one thing. I certainly agree with what's been said so far. It's just that if your aim is to get yourself published and get yourself cited a lot, it makes sense, as Ralph says, to go to the journals that most are closest to your interest area, because others will probably be interested in it and more likely to cite it. Whereas if you put it into a journal and it's like the odd person out, as Ralph said, then you might get virtually no citations from that paper. So in that sense, it doesn't matter whether it's the highest ranking one in the world, you're not going to get any citations. So, it might be against your interests.
If I may add here now for the International Journal of Project Management, It is positioned as a management journal, bridging out to other fields like innovation or organization behavior, leadership, strategy, you call it. Yeah, so this is the positioning. And I will, Ralph, just in contrast to project management journal to make it more clear, because there is overlaps. And the question is a very good question. Yeah, we all do empirical papers in all the journals. But I think for us, International Journal of Project Management, we are more looking for empirical papers. Yeah, that is the profile. We want to have empirical papers. And of course, we also publish review papers from time to time, or strong conceptual papers, but the main focus is empirical papers. So I think that helps a little bit in the differentiation. And when it comes to the new kid on the block, if I may call the new journal like this, I think here the opportunity you have with project leadership and society are twofold. The one is that already from the title, you see that we are seeking for contributions that also, for papers that are making a contribution to society. So that's a little bit of a different positioning than the other journals, or explicit positioning than the other journals. We are also aiming more for readers, reflective practitioners, and policymakers. And we also have lighter formats. Yeah, so you have, for instance, the possibilities of discoveries or next practices that have been proven already and demonstrated in practice. Also, novel research methods are very welcome, and also education papers. So if you have an education paper in project management and you would like to get it published in project management and not in an education journal, that would be a good option here.
Okay, there were a couple of specifics that sort of fall into the same discussion we've been having with regards to the other types of quantitative papers. One is with regards to cash flow forecasting and cost analysis. But there's also one with regards to just heuristic rules in general. Are those acceptable in a paper?
Gary, I have not understood the question, so.
Okay, the question was essentially, would the topic of cash flow forecasting and cost analysis be appropriate? And then there was a sort of a similar one with regards to, are heuristic rules acceptable as a paper?
Well, I mean, I think there is sometimes very open research topics. Yeah, so you need to be very careful whether in these topic areas you still are able to make a considerable contribution to it. Yeah, and while some papers or some topics might be very interesting from a practice point of view, they are less interesting from a theoretical academic point of view. So the ideal topic, I would say, is something that is of practical relevance and still has a lot of potential further developing, that you have a good discourse there, and academic discourse you can engage and contribute to. And when you talk about cash flow, this is for me something that is very practical and very often or sometimes handed in more as a demonstration. So it's something that is a calculation, and somebody in the paper demonstrates different forms of cash flow. And at least for International Journal of Project Management, I would say this is out of scope because it is a demonstration. So it will depend a little bit how you also frame it.
Yeah, I would see it in a almost a similar way. I would suggest that be critical against your own work. Go through the reference list and look at the references in terms of quantity and quality, and then decide, do I make a contribution to the finance industry using projects as an example? Or do I make a contribution to the project management industry using a financial perspective? Yeah, we often get papers where out of 100 references, 80 are from the financial side, and then 20 are to the project management side. And clearly, these papers they use only project as an example for something that is much more interesting for a finance journal than it is for a project management journal. Yeah, so be honest to yourself. What contribution do you make, and is this contribution better located or embedded into the other industry than the project management industry, or is it a real contribution to project management?
And I think we are grateful for researchers that are actually bringing project management research and project management related research and project management citations also into other journals. Yeah, that actually broadens up our reputation and gets us out of a silo situation. So there's nothing wrong with that. So project management, our project management journals are not always the option. Yeah, you might also consider healthcare journals if you do project management related research in the context of healthcare, or IT journals. So I think this is also a message I want to share. That also strategically, it's nice that project management gets visible in different types of journals.
We also have a few questions that were asked in the previous session of this conference last week for the North America and Europe. And I'm sure that these questions are also relevant for this audience. So I will start with the first one. One of the limitations of a single case study is the generalization of results. What is the best possible way to address it?
Well, I can probably comment on that briefly. So indeed, I said in the presentation that there's no need to seek generalization to a population. So you don't need to try to say that if you have studied one project in one environment, that would apply to other projects in other environments. So that's not needed. But the issue is what is the case offering in light of the field that you're studying or the topic that you're studying? So what is it offering? So sometimes we speak about contribution or generalization to theory. I'm a little bit careful with the word theory because I think it's a very strong word. So I think that the point is, what understanding are you bringing in light of the phenomenon that you're studying? What is the insight? And I think that that kind of contribution is built throughout the papers that you're writing. So delimit your choices very clearly in the beginning. So delimit what you say that you are studying, make the scope smaller. Then explain your choices in the method section very clearly. Make sure that in the literature review, you have covered only the delimited scope. You don't need to go broader. Keep the scope small. Then indeed, in the method section, explain clearly what you have done and how. And then afterwards, in the end, in the discussion or conclusions, consider the limitations that remain in the validity of your study. And indeed, in the discussion and conclusions, explicate very clearly what is the novel thing that you're offering compared to earlier knowledge, and how can you confirm your knowledge from your case based on earlier research. So I think that's the issue, that you reflect very clearly on what exists already. And then hopefully that will bring some sort of kind of theoretical generalization eventually. But indeed, I would say reduce the scope, focus exactly there, and then seek generalization there.
All right, the next question then. Question to the editors of IJPM. There are a number of calls for papers for special issues inviting abstract proposals. Can I consult an individual guest editor prior to the submission of the abstract proposal?
I have edited several special issues, and I would say that normally there is a contact person in the special issue calls, and yes, you can consult them. But not necessarily to kind of check whether your paper is appropriate, but rather if you misunderstand something, or if you have challenges in understanding, the whole point of looking at the proposal is to offer feedback during the process. But of course, you can consult the contact person.
Another question for IJMPB. The presentation was about action research. Are you specifically interested in papers using action research approaches? Shankar, Derek?
We had 2 special issues. We published one special issue, which are about 10 papers, and we are publishing the second one. We already have 6 papers. We'll have 4 papers, and we'll have 6 papers. So we do encourage people to submit action research papers, but just be sure that you write a good paper, because action research reviews are quite tough. So it need to be a well written paper. Yeah, we do. IJMPB, I'm sure other journals welcome action research papers too. It's not exclusively this journal. Yeah. I published in IJPM and PMJ in action research.
Okay, Ofer, we have a new question with regards to, I hear what is being advised is that PMBOK is not a theory, but is there a place for us to be publishing the likes of design science to develop more effective evidence-based and validated methods?
Why not?
I would say all of the journals here represented would be interested in publishing.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, so I think design science is a very interesting approach, and as project management is applied, and you can, I mean, the question is for me rather, is it narrow that you just focus on one method, or is it then more kind of an approach and a kind of several methods together, which might be more interesting than just looking into only cost management or time management? Yeah. But just as a reaction.
One thing about the question as such, as I have it here in front of me, the person who asked the question says he or she understands that the PMBOK is not theory. This is the misunderstanding of what I said. Yeah, the PMBOK is theory, yeah, but it is not academically credible theory, yeah, because the process through which this theory is developed does not hold the quality standards that we have in academia. Yeah, so it is a theory, but it's not credible enough to be used in the academic circles.
I think we might discuss now what is a theory and what is not a theory, but I think the point is that, and this is not only PMBOK, but it's also ICB, it's Prince2, so you call it, yeah. It will also be the ISO, yeah. It does not matter. All the standards, they are a body of knowledge, and they are developed, have been developed in a different setting for different purpose. I think for me, this is the difference that it makes. Yeah, they have been developed by practitioners for practitioners. And so they come from a different, more or less, I would not use the term social system. Yeah, and theories, academic theories, let's put it that way, they have been developed in academia. Of course, also sometimes in cooperation with practitioners, and I would heavily encourage that, that there is this link and the discussion. But I think the point here is what Ralph was mentioning, the credibility of the theory. But for me, this is a different question than the design thinking part you were bringing up. Yeah?
Yeah, there was a question about design science. I recall publishing a paper in the special issue in the International Journal of Managing Projects in Business. It was called Action Design Science. It basically followed the design science. It was submitted as an action research paper, and it was published. Yeah.
Another question from the North America and the Europe session. If a potential paper is discussing a topic which is new in project studies, and not many papers in the target journal have talked about it, what is the approach to follow to have it published in the desired journal?
To be honest, I don't. Yeah, go ahead, Mia.
Yeah, I think the core issue is framing. New topics are always welcome and they are highly appreciated, but their relevance needs to be somehow established in this domain. So if you have a very new topic that hasn't appeared appropriately in this community of project scholars, then you would need to find a slot for it somewhere that exists already. So for instance, I have been very surprised that we have very few studies concerning identity or image, which are quite relevant to organizational behavior and strategy, but we haven't had that many papers in project management field. But they would have a place, they would potentially have a place, but you would have to frame it. So they could be framed from various perspectives to this field quite nicely. So to identify the discussion in which they are suitable, discussing that and the need and the gap there, and then bringing it in.
Yeah, I think Mia, that's a really good answer, actually. I was thinking of some of the candidates that I've supervised, and some of them have been doing subjects that were seen to be a little bit at the edge. But when we've looked to publish in any of the project management journals, then obviously we have to frame it as this is interesting to people in project management, not just sort of go through what might be a highly rigorous paper in its other sort of core area. So I think your answer was excellent, Mia.
Yeah, the reason why I want to emphasize that is that we very often get justifications through the lack of research. And I think that's a bad justification. So if somebody says that there's a lack of research in this issue in project management, then I would say, is it relevant? Is it important? Is it a problem? Is it important for success? So those are the kinds of issues that we need to establish first, that they're somehow important and relevant. The lack of research is not really a motive.
Exactly. I mean, we could say there's a lack of research on the shoe size of project managers, yeah. But will this study help us in any way? Probably not. And the burden here is not to find out what is not researched. Yeah, the burden is to sell your idea, to sell your study through a problem. What is the problem that you address with your study? Yeah, and that comes very early on in the paper. Yeah, when you do your introduction in the first 2 paragraphs, you need to state the problem that you're addressing and not the gap in the literature review and in the literature. Yeah, you can do that later when you do your literature review part of your paper, but in the beginning you should outline what's the problem, what opportunities do we simply not see or cannot take up because the phenomenon you investigate is not investigated. Yeah, so don't step into this trap of saying something has not been researched before and therefore it is worthwhile researching. That's not the case.
Another question: for papers published in project management journal using quantitative methods, is it possible to find the data set of the papers?
Okay, I'll start with that one. The most submission systems now, when you submit a paper, you will indicate whether you can make the data available, and then that becomes public knowledge if it is. However, the vast majority of data collections require approval by, at least in the States, it's called the Institutional Review Board, which requires complete privacy of the data collection. So that would actually not even be permitted in most of the papers that are published, if not all of them. I have yet to see one paper actually come through our submission system where the authors have granted that they will provide the data for public use.
I think, as Gary says, all journals already provide the possibility of a data of brief. However, this is not used. So I would think if you're interested, the best way is to just approach the author and ask whether they can share or not. And sometimes they can, other times they cannot.
The next one is more of an observation, but maybe you would like to comment on this experience. Someone wrote that they had 2 experiences with project management journals with rejected papers. The comments from the different journals were completely different. No question, but just a comment.
Hard to comment on a case if we don't see the details, but yeah, that can happen. It maybe both comments were right, yeah. So they just saw it from different perspectives.
Yeah,
sorry. As you could see that we are all also emphasizing sometimes different perspectives and different topics. Yeah, so that will also be probably influencing the comments you're getting by the reviewers.
I think I might just add that all reviewers are different. We're different human beings. So sometimes you might actually be reading the paper from a totally different perspective than that was intended by the author. So it's just, I suppose, part of it's luck of the draw, I suppose, with the reviewers. But you just try to do your best, as Mia and others have said, to try to explain the context, explain the whole research, how it came about, and then the reviewer has to, make the best of what they've got in front of them.
When it comes to desk rejects, for example, we often get papers which are very weak in many respects. Yeah, and then the question is, what do you list? You cannot send back a list of 25, 30 items that are extremely weak. So you pick the one that you subjectively think are the most terrible ones, and reject it on the basis of that. Somebody else who read the same paper might have another priority list and picks a few others. Yeah, so if you get different feedback from different people, it is an indicator that your paper needs polishing at various ends. Yeah, it's not just one problem that the paper has.
Then one thing that occurs to me regarding this issue is that did the authors do modifications after the first submission and rejection? Sometimes what happens is that they don't do any modifications. They get the first desk reject or perhaps even review feedback. They don't do modifications and then they send to another journal. And I think that's not good. That's not a good practice. So that was kind of misusing the review process. So if somebody has already offered feedback, then that feedback should be taken into account somehow to improve the paper. Because sometimes what I notice as a reviewer, I remember one case in not project-oriented journals, but some other journals that I originally reviewed one paper, offered very extensive feedback on it. Then I had to review the same paper for another journal because it got rejected in the first one. I was completely surprised that the author hadn't done anything between. And I told the editor that I have reviewed this paper previously, I have offered these comments, but the author has not done anything regarding the paper. And I think that's just bad practice. That's misuse of reviewers' resources. And that tends to happen in a small community, that the same reviewers may be in different journals. So I think it's authors' responsibility to take into account the feedback that they receive and improve the paper, make better things. And if it happens that the author had improved the paper based on the comments, and the next reviewer spotted some other problems, then indeed, I'll just follow what Derek said. We are different people. We notice different things.
Thank you. And I think we have just time for one last question. Thank you for Project Management Journal editors for listing their presentation in the YouTube channel. Will editors of other project management journals be sharing their presentations as well?
Okay, I'll wrap up with that then. This particular session will be posted in its entirety within a few days is our hope. We're going to go ahead and we're going to index tonight's session, and that will be posted on the YouTube site for the Project Management Journal at this time. And there will still be other resources that other journals have. And when I send out the email, which gives the address for this particular presentation, I will also have some information from the other journals which they've provided me. And I will attach that to the email as well to provide the links to their resources.
I think that's great. I think that's great, Gary. It's going to be so useful for so many, not only PhD students, but those of us that have been doing research for quite a long time. And the sort of presentation is really a good refresher for us, particularly if you've had a couple of papers rejected, you know, and we've probably all of us have had papers rejected. So it's an excellent resource. Thank you.
Yeah, just let me also point out, if you did register, I already have your email, so I will get that to you. If you just got this link through a friend or something though and did not register, please send me an email so that I can add you to the list. Okay, so it's just well, I'll drop it in the chat, but it's gklein@uccs.edu.
So
Whoops,
I think
I just
I
sent
think
that to you only.
yeah, Gary's email address.
There we go.
So thank you everyone for participating in this session of the Asia Pacific edition of the Project Management Micro Conference. Thank you, Gary, for organizing this. Thank you for all the panelists and the editors for contributing and for the great questions from the participants. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.